By the late 1960s, America was moving faster than ever. The new interstate highways stretched from coast to coast, promising quicker, smoother journeys than the old two-lane roads could ever deliver. Families were traveling more, business people were crisscrossing states, and Greyhound, the nation's biggest name in bus travel, needed to keep up. For decades, most coaches had measured just 35 feet. Reliable, yes, but limited in how many passengers they could carry. On a busy holiday weekend, or a long haul between Chicago and Los Angeles, that shortcoming meant fewer seats and less revenue per trip. Greyhound wanted something bigger, something that could carry more Americans without adding extra buses to the road. MCI, the Canadian builder that Greyhound had invested in back in the 1950s, was ready to answer. The company had already experimented with the massive MC-6, a bold 40-foot coach that was also a full 102 inches wide. But that width ran into trouble. Many states still outlawed anything over 96 inches. The idea was right, but the timing was wrong. So MCI tried again. In 1968, it unveiled the MC-7, a 40-foot coach that stayed within the 96-inch legal limit. To Greyhound, it was the perfect fit, a legal, nationwide solution that could carry nearly 50 riders in comfort. MCI called it the Challenger, and that name fit. It was a challenge to the old standards and the opening move in a new era of American highway travel. What made the MC-7 stand out was not just its length, but how it was built. MCI gave it a true monocoque frame, where the body and chassis worked as one solid structure. That design shaved off unnecessary weight, added strength, and gave the coach a durability operators could count on. The roofline carried a distinctive step, lifting the passenger deck higher and giving the bus a profile that seemed taller and prouder than the 35-foot machines that came before. From the curb, it looked every bit like the modern highway cruiser America had been waiting for. Beneath the rear, engineers added a tag axle set behind the drive axle. That simple choice spread the load, improved stability, and let the 40-foot coach handle its extra weight without straining. For passengers, it meant a smoother ride. For drivers, it meant better control on the open road. Large side windows completed the look, bringing more light into the cabin and opening up the view for riders who wanted to watch the miles roll by. In an era when travel was still as much about the journey as the destination, those wide panes of glass gave the MC-7 a sense of openness that matched the spirit of the new interstate age. Beneath the sleek lines, the MC-7 was defined by its numbers. The coach stretched a full 39 feet 11.5 inches from bumper to bumper, officially rounded to 40 feet in Greyhound brochures. At 96 inches wide and roughly 129 inches tall, it fit neatly within highway limits across the United States. No waivers, no exceptions, just a legal green light from coast to coast. Power came from the tried-and-true Detroit Diesel 8 V71, an 8-cylinder, 2-stroke engine that delivered about 318 horsepower. It wasn't flashy, but it was a familiar workhorse, easy to service, parts available in every Greyhound garage, and trusted by mechanics who had worked on Detroit diesels for years. Most MC-7s left the factory with a Spicer/Dana 8844A 4-speed manual transmission, requiring drivers to work the gears on long grades. Toward the end of production, an Allison automatic became available, offering relief to operators who wanted easier handling in city traffic. Inside, seating ranged from 47 to 49 passengers depending on layout. Under the floor, baggage bays offered generous space for luggage, an essential feature for coast-to-coast service. Tipping the scales at around 29,000 pounds empty, the MC-7 was no lightweight, but its balanced design made it dependable mile after mile. These specifications gave the Challenger more than just a modern look. They provided the backbone that let it carry America through the final years of the 1960s and into a new decade of travel. Out on the highway, The MC-7 quickly proved itself to be a solid workhorse. Drivers appreciated the sturdiness of its frame and the way the tag axle steadied the ride, especially on long stretches of interstate. Yet not every impression was glowing. The Detroit Diesel 8V71, faithful as it was, sometimes felt underpowered when faced with mountain grades or a coach loaded with nearly 50 passengers and their luggage. Many veterans recalled downshifting through the Rockies, coaxing every ounce of strength from the engine. Still, what it lacked in raw punch, the MC-7 made up for in consistency. Mechanics loved its simplicity. Parts were plentiful, service routines were familiar, and keeping the bus on the road didn't require exotic skills or tools. That meant less downtime, fewer surprises, and lower maintenance costs. Qualities any operator valued more than sheer speed. From a business standpoint, the arithmetic was hard to ignore. Adding 5 extra feet compared to earlier 35-foot models translated into more paying seats and greater efficiency per trip. For Greyhound, which operated hundreds of MC-7s coast to coast, the difference added up quickly. Each run could carry more passengers without adding more buses, drivers, or fuel stops. In short, the MC-7 wasn't a hot rod, it was a dependable moneymaker. For the men behind the wheel and the companies running the numbers, that balance of reliability and economy was what truly mattered. For the men and women who boarded an MC-7, the experience felt different from the moment they stepped up the stairs. The raised passenger deck sat higher than the driver's seat, giving riders a commanding view of the road ahead. Through the broad windows, each nearly 3 feet tall, the American landscape unfolded like a moving postcard. Whether it was the flat plains of Kansas or the neon glow of Las Vegas, the view was part of the journey. Inside, the seating for 47 to 49 passengers struck a balance between comfort and practicality. Upholstered cushions, overhead racks for small bags, and wide aisles gave a sense of space that older 35-foot coaches often lacked. On long hauls, passengers appreciated the restroom tucked away in the rear, along with the blast of air conditioning that kept summer trips bearable even in Texas heat. Down below, the baggage bays could swallow dozens of suitcases, guitars, and souvenir boxes bound for distant homes. For families moving across states or college students traveling back for the holidays, that space was as important as the seats above. Most of all, the MC-7 gave a feeling of openness. In an age when flying was still expensive and personal cars not always reliable for cross-country travel, riding the Challenger offered a safe, affordable way to see America. 1 mile, 1 town, 1 window view at a time. No story of the MC-7 is complete without mentioning its rival across town, the GM Buffalo series. General Motors had rolled out the PD-4903 in 1968 and the PD-4905 shortly after, both stretching 40 feet in length and, in some cases, a full 102 inches wide. On paper, they promised more power and a touch of luxury, aiming to keep GM at the top of the highway coach market. Riders often remembered the Buffalo's dramatic styling. Its sloping roofline and distinctive split-level windows gave it a futuristic look. Under the floor, options for stronger Detroit diesel engines made the Buffalo feel livelier on steep grades. For passengers, it could seem like the flashier ride, and for operators who prized prestige, GM's name still carried weight. But MCI had its own advantages. The MC-7, staying at 96 inches wide, could legally operate everywhere in the country without worrying about state restrictions. Its simpler construction, proven 8V71 engine, and sturdy monocoque frame made it easier to service in Greyhound depots nationwide. Where the Buffalo sometimes dazzled, the Challenger delivered steady performance day after day. In the end, both buses defined the late 1960s highway scene. Yet for Greyhound, which needed reliability across thousands of miles and hundreds of stations, the MC-7 was the safer bet. The Buffalo may have turned more heads, but the Challenger kept more schedules. If the MC-7 earned its reputation, it was because of the company that put more of them on the road than anyone else: Greyhound. Between 1968 and 1973, the carrier purchased roughly 1,400 coaches, making the Challenger the backbone of its fleet during those crucial years. On highways from New York to Los Angeles, its tall roof and wide windows became part of the Greyhound image, rolling past rest stops and small-town depots alike. Greyhound wasn't alone. Trailways also fielded its share of MC-7s, as did a variety of regional operators across both the United States and Canada. In cities like Minneapolis, Dallas, and Toronto, the Challenger carried everything from cross-border travelers to everyday commuters heading home for the weekend. For riders, spotting one in the depot meant dependability. For companies, buying an MC-7 was a statement of practicality. Here was a bus that could handle 40-foot loads legally in every state, with parts available at almost any shop along the route. It wasn't just a purchase. It was an investment in keeping schedules on time. By the early 1970s, the sight of an MC-7 in Greyhound livery had become as familiar as the running dog logo itself. For many Americans, the Challenger wasn't just a machine. It was the face of intercity travel during a changing era. By 1973, the MC-7's time at the front of the pack was drawing to a close. MCI had listened carefully to operators and drivers, and the message was clear. While the Challenger was dependable, it needed more power and a fresher look to keep pace with the future. The answer came in the form of the MC-8. The new coach carried forward the 40-foot, 96-inch standard, but featured revised styling, larger windshields, and the ability to house more powerful engines. For Greyhound, which was always hungry for efficiency and reliability, the MC-8 felt like a natural step forward. Many fleets that had leaned on the Challenger quickly shifted their orders to the new model. Yet the story didn't end there. The MC-8 set the stage for one of the most successful highway coaches in American history, the MC-9 Crusader II, introduced in 1978. That model would dominate the 1980s, with thousands sold and a reputation for toughness that carried well into the 1990s. In that progression, the MC-7 stood as the bridge. It wasn't the final word, but it was the crucial link that proved a 40-foot coach could be both practical and profitable. Without the Challenger paving the way, the MC-8 and MC-9 might never have reached the same heights. When the final MC-7 rolled off the line in 1973, just over 2,550 coaches had been built. That number may seem modest compared to the thousands of MC-9s that followed, but for its time, the Challenger carried enormous weight. It was the bus that firmly established 40 feet by 96 inches as the new industry standard, a template that would guide American coach design for decades. For Greyhound, the MC-7 delivered exactly what was promised: more seats, dependable service, and a design that could legally operate from coast to coast. For passengers, it meant brighter cabins, wider views, and a sense of traveling in something truly modern. And for MCI, it marked the moment the company stepped out of General Motors' shadow and claimed a commanding role in the U.S. highway coach market. Today, surviving MC-7s are rare sights. A handful have been restored for museums or preserved by private collectors, their tall roof lines and big windows instantly recognizable to anyone who traveled the open road in the late 1960s or early 1970s. For those who rode them, the memories linger: the sound of the 8V71 working through the gears, the view from a window seat as the miles rolled by, and the simple thrill of going places. The Challenger's production run may have been short, but its influence was lasting. It was the bus that proved bigger could be better, and it paved the way for the legendary models that followed. Before closing the book on the Challenger, a few points deserve to be set straight. The MC-7 was officially known as the Challenger. It was not the Crusader II. That name belonged to the MC-9, introduced in 1978. And while some sources have suggested the MC-8 replaced it as early as 1970, the truth is the MC-7 stayed in production until 1973, handing the torch directly to its successor. Clearing up those details matters, because the MC-7 holds a special place in the timeline of American coach history. It was the bridge between the early 35-foot buses and the giants that came after, a machine that helped set the stage for a golden era of intercity travel. And now, the memory belongs to us. If you ever rode a Greyhound MC-7, maybe on a holiday trip, maybe on a cross-country adventure, you remember the view through those tall windows, the steady hum of the 8V71, and the feeling of heading somewhere new. We'd love to hear your story. Did you ride the Challenger back in its heyday? Share your memories in the comments. And if you want to keep reliving the great machines of America's past, don't forget to like this video and subscribe. The road may have changed, but the memories still ride with us.